Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. My name is Eva Carolina Ruiz Gutierrez, and now I'm going to present my key activity final stage physics 2. So let's start. First, I want to tell you my main topic of the project, or the main question. That is, when your mom throws the flip-flop at you, it is possible to calculate the force with which the flip-flop hits you? So let's see. First, I'm going to start with the justification and theoretical framework. Of course, when we are from Latin America, it is not a good idea to make our moms angry because it is possible that they could throw a flip-flop on us. So the question here is, have we ever wondered how this action or this kind of actions can be related to physics? It is so interesting and awesome to know that events or things like this as simple that can sound like an act of punishment from Latina moms can be related with mathematical models or things that we have seen in our physics classes. So analyzing these things, it is really easy to calculate the force with which the flip-flop will hit us. For this, we're going to need some concepts really with physics. For example, the parabolic movement. It helps us to explain situations where the objects move forward, downward, or upward at the same time. This concept is called like that because of its trajectory. It's similar to a parabola. In this movement, X and Y are perpendicular from each other. Here we have some of the formulas used for it. Then we have other kind of concept that is really important for the final result, that is the impulse force. This concept is the study of the average of impact forces during collisions. As I say, this concept is going to help us to calculate the force with which the flip-flop hit us. This kind of concept use the next variables: the mass, the final and initial velocity, and time. So now I'm going to talk about the hypothesis. My hypothesis is, after making the measurements and using the corresponding formulas for each desired result, such as velocity of the launch, I will find the force of the flip-flop when it hits us. So let's see how is the methodology. Studied variables, experimental design, materials, and method. For this experiment, I had to simulate throwing a flip-flop from different distances. So the main thing that we have here are the variables. We have three kinds of variables. The first one, independent variables. In this one, we have gravity, height, time, distance, angle, and gravity. For the second one, that is really with the dependent variables, we have the velocity, and the third one, the control variables. Here we have the object, that is the flip-flop, and its mass. Then we have the material for the experiment test. The flip-flop, that is mainly the object that we're going to throw. The measuring tape, we're going to use this tool in order to measure each of the distances. The protractor, we're going to use in order to know the angle of the arm when we are throwing the flip-flop. The post-its are going to help us to mark each of the measurements that we take with the distance. And the chronometer, easy, in order to know the value of the time. And then we're going to have the steps. First of all, I prepare all the materials for the experiment. Then I measure the distances using the measuring tape. As I say, I have 6 measurements, like between 1 meter and 6 meters. And then I mark them all with the post-its, as I said. Then I threw the flip-flop from each of the marked measurements, depending on the distances. Then I measure the launch angle with the protractor. Then I take the time with the chronometer. Each time of the object, that is the flip-flop, is thrown until it stops. In here, it's really important to do this 5 times to obtain 5 specific time for each distance. Then I wrote all the data obtained from the independent variables that were the time and the distance in some tables that I have in a Word. In these tables, all were explained correctly in order to know all the specific results and to have all the variables that I needed. Once I have everything, I also take the average of all the times of each distance, and also I wrote them in the table. Something really important to know here is that we have to weight the flip-flop to determine its mass and use it then in the next procedures. Now we're going to have the results, the raw data statistical analysis. For the first table, I use what is this kind of formula that is related with the parabolic movement. As you can see, here I have the variable of the distance, the time average, as I said, and we have the procedures in order to know the initial velocity. That is one of the variables that we needed for the final result. As you can see, we have all the procedures here. Then we have other table in which we use the others two formulas. One of them parabolic movement and the other is really with the concept of force. Here we have the initial velocity that we get with the other procedures of the other table, the time average. Then we have to use the formula for the final velocity, as you can see, all the procedures here. And then we use these variables in order to know the force with the formula that we have here. Then my conclusions, the result, limitations, and improvement proposals. First of all, I was able to prove that my hypothesis was correct because of the results that I got, and all of them using the parabolic movement and the concept of force that I explained before. Also, I realized that when the distance is greater, the time in which the flip-flop is thrown and stops also is going to be greater. Other thing that I realized is each time the initial velocity increases, the final velocity does the same. And finally, we have some values of the force, that were similar or were the same values because of the factors and the variables that we have. The factors are like the space, the person that threw the flip-flop, its mass, anything that can affect to this experiment were things that help us in order to know the final result. Here I have the limitations, and mainly the limitation were the lack of correct tools and materials that we needed in order to have accurate values. Also, some of the limitations were related with the first of the experiments, the ones that I mentioned before. All of these were because of the, for example, the chronometer. Of course, I use the one of my cell phone. Well, I think that when we want to know the accurate or specific results of an experiment, we have to use specific tools that are used when we have to do an important experiment. Not tools that we can get in our house. Also, the factors I think that are important. This is one of the things that I want to say in the improvement proposals. I think that we should know more tests in this experiment with different person, with other kind of flip-flop in order to know more things that can be our results, because also can this affect to our final result and the main idea of our project. And here are all the APA references that I used. So thank you. See you. Bye.